Welcome back to another episode of Survivor Worldwide on Reality Pop. We have got a special guest with us here today, a Survivor South Africa Season 7 alumni, Paul Smulders. Paul, it's been a while since we've spoken to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. And you guys, we're keeping safe here. Obviously, we've got a lot of COVID at the moment, but otherwise very, very well, yeah, and enjoying the series.
Yeah, 100%. So what is the situation at the moment with COVID in South Africa? Do you guys have a bit of a lockdown at the moment? I heard something that there's another lockdown at the moment going on. And do you think it's going to affect the Super Rugby, or not Super Rugby, the British and Irish Lions playing the Springboks? Hopefully we get to see that.
I think the game's still going to go ahead. We're in lockdown 4, especially Gauteng. So the borders have been closed. We can't leave Gauteng unless you've got business. And last night's figures, I think the last 24 hours were 26,000. So it's quite hectic at the moment. I think we're starting to hit the peak here, which is not good.
Yeah.
You know, last lockdown, you sort of didn't hear of many people getting it. It wasn't close. Whereas now, every second person you're talking to is actually getting the COVID. So yeah, not good. But we keep going.
No, 100%. And, you started a whole new, I believe you've got your own business now. You went solo with the real estate business. Is that correct? How's that going for you? Because that's been a couple of months. Obviously, this is not ideal timing, starting something new and then you go into a lockdown.
Yeah, it's okay. Look, I'm pretty well known in the real estate industry. We started, I think it's about a month ago now, we started the Dynasty Property Group. And it is a bit difficult at the moment because obviously you've got either buyers or sellers that have got COVID, so it's difficult with viewings. But long term, I think it's definitely going to work for us. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
We've got a little bit of our own news here with Survivor Worldwide as well. We have finally branched out onto the audio platforms for podcasts, so you can listen to us on all of those normal spots that you normally listen to podcasts. I believe Apple we're a little bit behind on yet. We're still trying to figure that out, which hopefully in the next week or so we'll have that on there as well. But it's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor FM, which is what we do our podcast through. We'll drop a link in the description below after this live video for people that are interested and rather listening to it. I know there's a lot of people who like to listen to their podcasts while they're driving into work, sitting in traffic, or they're out on on the treadmill doing a run and things like that. So that's really exciting for us moving forward. Riley, I also want to welcome you to the show. It's been a little bit more than a week since me and you have caught up. How is things going over in Sydney?
Yeah, well, New South Wales is in lockdown as well at the moment. It seems this new strain of the virus is, taking its toll on everyone. But yeah, hopefully we'll get it in a couple of weeks and manage to control it a little bit. But I mean, I'm safe and sound, fortunately. But yeah, let's just hope it all goes back to normal soon.
We've got Chris Dixon, who is one of our listeners, and I know that Riley, you'll know from having conversations with him in our Discord channel, which we'll pop a link down here below as well. He's one of the people that's quite active on there talking about Survivor in general as well. Chris, thank you for welcoming us. It's great to have you in the chat. We've got a great episode to talk about here as well. And Paul, this was the mother of all episodes so far because we had 2 people that ends up getting evicted in this specific episode. Were you able to keep on top of everything that was going on?
Listen, I had to go and rewatch the series. When you asked me to come onto the show, I thought, no, hang on, I must go and rewatch and make sure that I know what's going on. At this stage, I still almost don't know what happened there. It was incredible. It was a full game of chess.
What is your thoughts been of the season so far? Do you like the Immunity Island sort of theme that they've brought in? Do you like what the production team has done to make it a little bit more, exciting in different ways? Because obviously you had the Island of Secrets, but there's other elements that's come in with this specific season as well. What have you thought of the theme and the cast so far?
I think the theme was brilliant. The Immunity Island as well. I mean, there's twists and turns which are incredible. At first I thought, what's going on? Why is it edited so strangely? But when I watched again, you actually realize that editing is brilliant as well. I mean, if you watch and an old person like myself starting to make a few notes and everything, I'm really, really enjoying the show. It's really tremendous. And I think you forced me into watching it again yesterday. I sat for 8 hours watching the show again and seeing what was what. And yeah, it really, really is a good show. The cast is brilliant. I mean, they're so fast moving. It's incredible what's actually happened there. I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's very, very fast. You really got to focus on what's going on. And
Yeah,
that's as
I
an
think
audience.
so.
And that's as an audience. Yeah.
Well, and that comes as a person who's actually gone out there and played the game as well, so you've got that extra layer of, understanding of actually being out on an island to go play this game. And obviously, the thing with this season being in South Africa, being in the Wild Coast as well, I think it's pretty cool to showcase a little bit of our backyard in South Africa to the rest of the world, which I think that we haven't spoken about it enough, Riley. The backdrop of this season, I think, is pretty amazing. And, what they've been able to do there, with obviously not being able to go into the beaches to do some of those water challenges, but sort of having the rivers involved and things like that. I think it's been pretty cool. And if you didn't know that it was in South Africa, I don't think you would have been able to pinpoint and say, yes, that's definitely in South Africa.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell at all. It's beautiful scenery, obviously a lot of danger with all the snakes and stuff, but you wouldn't be able to tell any difference. And it's great that Survivor South Africa managed to be able to film in their own backyard and maintain a bubble in South Africa, which is, great that we have, the show back on air. And from what I know, it was all done very safely. So, for Survivor South Africa to be able to achieve that feat and film in their own backyard with COVID going on, and do so safely as well, it's brilliant.
Now, I want to get straight into the episode because it is a bit of a lengthy one with a lot happening. So let's dig into it. So we start this episode with Aniso and Teriso having a bit of a conversation. And Teriso, I guess Aniso lets Teriso know that there is an idol on the island. Tyson's the person who's got it. And Teriso, I think, does a pretty smart thing here in trying to get the note for the idol so that she can go and try and force people her way and voting with her. But it also kind of gives you an early in here, Riley, as to where Teriso is sitting within this tribe, because she feels like she needs this leverage to talk to her own alliance. It kind of tells us she's not in a good spot very early on in the episode already. Yeah,
well, we know that Teriso, this is her first real test of trust at this point, because she hasn't been to a tribal council yet, other than when she had the immunity in the first episode. So she hasn't really tested those alliances at all. She was out of the loop on day one, being on Immunity Island, so she didn't manage to build those bonds with the others. And she does say to Anessa, I want to gain your trust. I want to work with you in the game. So can we work something out here between us? And maybe I can bring you in with some of the old Zumba members, because it looks like at this stage, people like Dino and Kihan are on the bottom, and they're sort of drifting away from Renier, who seems to be in the power position. So I think Teriso was recognizing of that and saw a potential path for her to go with the minority Vuna members and potentially create a voting block there that could, keep her safe in the game.
Paul, were you surprised to see that Teriso was struggling as much as she did early in the game here? Because, preseason, we see Teriso talking about the fact that, I don't know if you're aware who the people are that she really looked up to in the US Survivor, but Cerie Fields is a very social player. Sandra Diaz-Twine, someone who's won the show twice. Immediately, she's got this great presence about her. Like I even told her in the exit interview, one of the things I would never forget about you, Teriso, is that you always smiled, even when you were sort of under attack and you were on the bottom and out, but you had this presence about you, and you radiated. From what I could see in the camera, it looked like positivity, but for some other reason she just didn't really gel with the girls. I feel like the guys kind of gave her like a little bit of an opportunity to talk even early in this episode. But what's your thoughts on Teriso and potentially that struggle to get in there? Because Riley kind of mentioned prior to the episode, Sipe kind of landed in the same situation in your tribe where she was in the outs as well. And what do you think Sipe did differently potentially to like a Teriso to ingratiate themselves within the tribe?
Look, Sipe was a very good talker, especially at tribal. I think you all remember that she could almost turn that tribal council around when she got there. Very, very good the way she spoke her way to going further in the game. With Teriso, I actually think she played quite well. She thought, what can I do? What can I do to save myself? She managed to get hold of the parchment, and she played it well, besides her not realizing that it was going to come out, obviously. Had it not come out, or had the other two not known about it and discussed it, I think she might have been able to take it a little bit further. But her knowledge of the game, I think, was good in the way that she was trying to save herself with the last sort of hope of using the parchment. So to me, she played it quite cleverly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because she chooses the two guys, and having spoken to her in the exit interview, she goes into her relationship with Renier, which apparently was a very good one, which never made the TV show. So we see throughout the episode that Renier is kind of, he wants to save her. He's not willing to immediately have the other Zamba members vote against her, the previous Zamba members, I should say. And also, Dino is the second person she chooses because she feels like Dino is someone that potentially, you know, just by the fear of having an idol out there, he might feel like he's going to be collateral damage. So, Riley, I do feel like Teresa also approaches the right people here early on in the game to try and talk to them, because we saw that the girls weren't really going to give her that time. But with the two guys, she's able to get a little bit of sort of momentum early in the episode.
I think you summed it up perfectly there. Dino is aware of the collateral damage and what impact it could have on him if there's an idol in play. He wants to be on the right side of the idol because he knows that, you know, he doesn't want to be idled out, which is, you know, smart for Dino. And Renier really did seem convinced that Teresa had the idol. So I do give Teresa props for possessing that parchment and then showing that to Renier and Dino, because that did gain her a lot of trust. And obviously, as we saw, I mean, without an idol, it was a little bit of a predicament there, especially given that Tyson had one for himself. So she really didn't have anything other than a piece of paper. But I think that was the right way for her to try and gain trust with the others, was to show the piece of parchment, which she obtained from the Vuna members, and use that as a little bit of leverage to get into their alliance and start to strategize with them, which, you know, if she hadn't had the idol parchment, she mightn't have had the opportunity either.
Now, guys, we know hindsight's 2020, right? But was the right move in this case to actually go and tell Renier and Dino that Tyson had an idol, instead of trying to play the parchment to say, listen, I got this information for our alliance, I know where the idol is. We now know that we can blindside him or successfully work around him to vote one of his alliance members out. I want to stay Zamba strong. Paul, do you think that would have been the right move? Obviously, like I said, hindsight 2020, she tried her best here, but I feel like maybe that was the move in this case.
Well, we all know then Tyson straight away said, well, that's it. You're out of here. So, I mean, what else could she really do? She was trying to gain trust and everything. So I don't think she had many options left. And yeah, that I think that did it for her with Tyson.
I did think it was her best option though, because she was in the minority, and there were only 3 Vuna members to work with. Obviously, Tyson having the idol, and Inesu eventually going to Immunity Island, it really only left an option between Tyson and Karan. So it really was up to who did Tyson play the idol for. Had she, you know, called out Tyson there? So I think she did the best she could to try and gain the trust of Tyson and also bring in Renier and Dino. But I really think that the fact that she couldn't get those relationships early, and also the fact she was scrambling a lot as well, really didn't help her. But it seemed like she tried the best she could with what she had, really.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm being super critical. Like I said, hindsight's 2020, but I'd like to explore all the different avenues of what someone could have done. Obviously, could have, should have. It's easy to say that while we're sitting here nice and comfortably in our homes talking about the show, but I like to explore it. So we move into the immunity/reward challenge here in this episode, and we find out that both tribes won't be playing for tribal immunity in this case. Both tribes will be going to the tribal council in the evening, and instead they've got a choice to play between two things. They can stand on a perch on one leg with a bowl of rice that they need to balance on top of their head, and they can choose to either play for a reward, which is a tribal reward, but you do get a double portion of the food if you win outright, or you can choose to play for Immunity Island. So 2 things I really want to explore here, Riley. Firstly, did you like them throwing this? You know, we know that this happens in Survivor US quite a lot. Did you like the fact that they took tribal immunity away here? Did you like the fact that individual immunity wasn't available and that there was this choice between playing for a reward and a potential to go to Immunity Island?
You know, I really liked it. And we saw this on the last season of Survivor, your season, Paul, Island of Secrets, when we had Nicole playing for the family letter. And we also had the trip to the Island of Secrets up for grabs. And I think also a meal as well. I like when the survivors are presented with different options. I mean, it's chaotic for us to be recapping 2 tribal councils in one episode, but I do like having this level of uncertainty at this stage of the game, obviously being close to the merge now, and, you know, alliances not being assured. To test those alliances now, I think it's really good to see how different alliances are coming together and the results of those. And I do like how Nico presented it as, you know, one option being you can go to Immunity Island, and obviously we saw Teresa and Nessie the only ones going for that. And then the other option being the reward as well for your tribe, which obviously, if I was doing it, I'd probably pick the tribal reward. It's obviously the safest option, and you get the least pie on your face in that instance. And obviously, if you win outright, you get the added advantage of a double portion as well.
I was very shocked to only see 2 people go for Immunity Island, though. I thought that there were a lot more people that were in precarious positions within their tribes, and I was surprised that they didn't go balls to the wall and try and go for it. Like even someone like a Chappies, for instance. Chappies has been exciting to watch this season. He plays a very balls to the wall style, but I was surprised that he felt as comfortable as he did to not play for that when he just lost his, the namesake of Paul's, his Paul in that season as well. Paul, were you surprised to only see 2 people put their hand up and try and go for the opportunity to go to Immunity Island?
It was quite weird, eh? I also thought that, and it actually made it so easy just for those 2, because it was a 50-50 chance, which was nice for them.
Made it very easy for Inesu, that's for sure, because Teriso pretty much immediately fell out of the challenge. And the other thing that I also wanted to put out there for me, one of the things I feel there's an opportunity missed here by production. I think they should have made it one person from each tribe can go to Immunity Island if they want, because again, it forces, kind of like what happened with you, Paul, in the beginning of Island of Secrets, where you had more than one person, but it happened right at the beginning of the game. You can have more than one person from a tribe together, secluded from the rest of the game, and it sort of forces those interconnected potential relationships. And I think, Paul, you mentioned that in that season, obviously it was too early in the game, but you guys even had that conversation with Quibi and with I forgot the Roscoe. You guys were talking about, or Rocco, you guys were talking about the potential of looking out for each other later in the game, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we were out at sea and we were chatting when we were swimming in the sea, and we were sort of saying, okay, we'll look after each other down the line. Obviously, I didn't get far enough down the line to see if it would work or not, but yeah, we did.
Yeah. So do you think that maybe sort of throwing something like that in there would have maybe opened up the game even further? Because at the moment, it kind of feels to me, Paul, like Zamba, the old Zamba members, the Green Tribe, the first Green Tribe, they're kind of like steamrolling over the season and really taking control of everything at the moment.
Yeah, it might have thrown totally new dynamics into the whole series, I think. But you know what? I think there's still more to come. I think they're actually throwing a lot into the series, and I think there's a lot more surprises coming. Just watch from what we've seen at this stage. I think there's a lot of extra twists and turns we haven't even seen in a sort of in a South African Survivor as yet. So I mean, production's doing a brilliant with what they're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's been exciting, Riley, because there's been no easy vote. Like there's been blindsides left, right, and center. So I don't think it's been predictable in the sense that Zamba is starting to get the ascendancy and they're starting to get momentum, but it's never been predictable who the person is that's actually going to go home each week. I mean, we've had people here like last week, Carla was one of the 3 girls. We couldn't make our mind up on who played the best game. So there were 3 different girls that we nominated for Best Player of the Week. And Carla was one of those people nominated as well. In this episode, she's the one ultimately that's going to go home in this spot, which we'll get into how that sort of happened and her downfall in a little bit, and I'll definitely give you an opportunity to talk to that, Riley. But I want to kind of finish off with this reward immunity challenge, and specifically looking at this. We do have, I think, a really funny moment here with Tyson having his peace signs out while he's balancing, which I thought was really funny to see. But it worked for him. And ultimately, Nicole is the one that's going to take it home, and she's going to win the double portion of food. But we find out that she doesn't really like beer. And Nico is actually making a bit of an exception here for her, Riley. Were you surprised that Nico was able to organize that pina colada for her?
Well, I'm glad they could conjure it up for her and find a pina colada for her just to keep her happy. I mean, she did win the reward and obviously beat out all the former Zamba members as well. So she was the last one standing up. I think she deserved the choice between a pina colada or a beer. So I was really happy to see that happen.
And it's really exciting, Paul. Like, I feel like this, and I don't know if you feel the same way. Myself and Riley have been talking about this quite a lot, but we feel like this season has probably got some of the, not that we're saying that previous Survivor seasons didn't have it, but I feel really strongly that we might have a woman winner this season. I feel like we've got extremely good gamers in between all of these women that are playing the game. And Nicole, again, stepping up here and winning another challenge, it just shows that the females are really physically and mentally, I feel like, in a lot of ways, dominating at the moment in the game.
Yeah. I also felt that they're going to dominate the show, especially down the line. Let's see what happens with Merge. But I think we're going to have a female winner as well.
If you had to sort of put it out there at the moment, who do you think is the sort of
You're not playing
favorite on the
fair.
female side?
That's not nice. I think Nicole's got a good chance. Amy could still surprise us as well. I mean, she's playing a reasonably good game as well. And the dynamics of the game changes every flipping episode. I mean, you saw with Carla, I didn't think Carla would go so early. But it's one of those things.
Nicole, on the topic of Nicole, Riley, how impressed were you with Nicole's lie to Teresa when Teresa came out and said, "Hey, were you guys going to vote for me?" And she said, "No, definitely not. He's scrambling." I was really impressed because I kind of felt the same like Dino. I was like, man, she's got a poker face on her.
Nicole is playing a very good social game at this point, I think. And we saw it early on at Zumba with Amy and Marisha. She's got those bonds. She seems to be in a strong position on her tribe. And yeah, you're right. She does. She knows how to handle every social situation, it seems. I really do think that Nicole is starting to emerge as one of the stronger members here and real contender for the prize, because she does have a great social game at this point. We haven't seen too much of her in terms of the confessionals, but I really think that Nicole, if she can put in performances like that in immunity challenges as well, she's a real threat to look out for as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get the host to bring you a pina colada, I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff. We don't see that happening very often. So I give credit where it's due. And she's definitely someone I think that we may have slept on a little bit. But one of the concerns that I had for Nicole early season was the fact that there was this rift between her and Teresa, which later on it seems like Marisha kind of this episode was the one that had more of a confrontational relationship with Teresa. But I was a little bit afraid that that's not a good sign for Nicole. But now that Teresa is out of the picture, again, and Nicole is in a majority old Zumba group within this game still, there's definitely a lot of power for her to maneuver and move and do things and still be that poverty type of player, Riley, that we thought she could be in this game. She hasn't really used the flirt card or any of that thing, but she is a good looking girl, so you never know. She might have those boys around her finger towards the end and get to the end and still win it outright. So I'm very impressed by all these different girls in this season and even how they're doing in these challenges. But ultimately, at the end of this reward immunity challenge, we find out that, Anesu, she's going to go to Immunity Island, and she's got the option to stay or play. And obviously for Anesu, Paul, Anesu was my preseason favorite to win the show, and she's still very high up in my ranks. I still think she's playing a very good game. The only problem for Anesu is that she's in a minority group at the moment, and she's going to have to find other bonds, which we've seen that she can find bonds with different people pretty easily. I am a little bit worried that maybe she's going to run out of numbers at this stage, but she does the correct thing here and decides to end up staying and playing. And who would have thought that, all those years in medical school actually came to something, 6 years of having to study to become a doctor. It's a memory challenge. And Paul, how would you have done in a memory challenge? I know I would have been terrible at that challenge.
I would not have made it there. I was very shocked at how quickly she did it and how I think did she not sing a song or something or memorize it with a song?
I think so.
Brilliant. I mean, that was really, really brilliant the way she did that. And yeah, she's also got a very, very good chance of winning this season as well. I mean, it all pretty much depends. I mean, Marisha's strong as well. So it depends after merge what the challenges are like and everything. It could go one way or the other as well. I think that the women are going to team up together and show the guys a thing or two there.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Anesu would give Rocco Riley a real challenge in the victory dance there at the end as well. She had some moves of her own, so Rocco would have been proud to see that. But ultimately, Riley, she gets the walk out of Tribal Council advantage, which we've seen in US Survivor a few times. I believe Jeremy Collins was the last person to get it in Winners at War. Do you like this advantage being thrown in there? And also, what do you think about the fact that she can use that up to the final 7?
Yeah, the Tribal Council pass, I only thought it would be able to be played in the next Tribal Council, but it can be played up until the final 7, which I think is, an enormous power for Anesu to hold in the game. It gives her the opportunity, if she's in the minority, obviously, she can decide to leave Tribal Council and keep herself safe. Or if one of her alliance members is in danger as well, she can give that. We did see it come up a couple of seasons ago in Australian Survivor with Luke playing it for someone to influence the vote when he was in the minority. So there are a lot of ways to use a Tribal Council pass in that instance to keep one of your tribe mates safe, or really to take someone out of the vote and not let them build trust and really shake things up and alter the plan. So I really like the inclusion of this.
Yeah, and especially in these tribes that have been it's been some close numbers like 4-3 or 6-3, like one person that you send away, even if it's the opposing alliance and you're just trying to eliminate a vote so you can have that additional vote on your group, can have a massive impact on how the game is played. And she said that, it's something that she wants to hold on to as long as she can. But I do fear for her in her current position in this tribe. Now that Teriso is gone, who's the next person that they're going to look at? Because, you've got Tyson and Kiran there. They might still want to go for Tyson now that he is seen as someone that can find idols, because that always puts a threat on somebody. Your threat level goes up when you're seen as someone that can find idols. But I don't know if Nesu is as safe in that group as well. And I would go as far as to say, Paul, that in this episode, Kieran probably impressed me the most as the person in that bottom three that worked with the majority group the most. You see him working his way into a lot of conversations in this episode.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of Kieran coming out now as well. Hey? I think he's starting to play the game. It's going to show in the next episode or two as well, I think, with the way he's starting to come out there.
Did you like his play here to get some votes coming his way in this, tribal council, where he said that I will play the trust game and we'll see who is lying, like if it's Tyson who's lying or if it's Teriso who's lying about having an idol. Obviously, he knew that Tyson had an idol. He knew that Teriso didn't have an idol, and he was willing to put his own neck on the block here to say, hey, put some votes my way. I trust you guys that much. Did you like what you're seeing from Kieran from a strategical point of view at the moment?
That was very, very cleverly played. I think strategically he did well, and also now to gain the trust. So it was very, very well done there. Yeah, very well played.
Riley, Kieran's one of your picks, I believe, the second highest pick in your draft team.
Yep.
You rated him really high coming into the season. What did you think of this play by Kieran in this episode?
Very, very ballsy. I mean, it's the complete opposite of what Teriso said. Teriso, obviously, she didn't have the idol, but she said to Dino, I don't want votes coming my way no matter what, even if I have the idol in my hands. Whereas Kieran says, put a couple of votes on me and it will help me to show my trust in you guys and that I'm telling the truth, and that Tyson has an idol, Teriso doesn't. It worried me a little bit at Tribal Council, though, because I'm a big fan of Kieran this season. He's a really very savvy player, and I think this episode showed it, that he knows what's going on in the tribe. He seems to be across everything and where people stand, and obviously what advantages are in the game as well. And he was aware of where the numbers were going to go. And what I liked from him was seeing him pulling aside Nicole, Marisha, and Renier and taking them aside and telling them how we should play the votes, splitting the votes between Teriso and Tyson, and determining which one is going to burn our trust ultimately, and who has the idol, who's telling the truth, who isn't.
Yeah, and I was extremely impressed to see Kieran in those conversations early on, even after the immunity challenge, when they go back to camp. Tyson says that, he's kind of been secluded from the rest of the tribe, but Kieran, he's still seen at the beach with them, talking to them, strategizing with them. And it came out, Kieran said to Tyson, you're too quiet. And people now actually think that you don't have the idol and that Teriso does have the idol. And it seems like Tyson has very early on in this sort of season, or, in this tribe, decided that he can't play with these people. And I feel like Kieran, between the two of them, he's coming across as being more socially flexible to work with people that he doesn't necessarily get along with. Like even the move that Tyson has in this episode to go and talk to Renier, to build trust with Renier and to say, I've got an idol. Kieran's the one who suggests that he should go and do that. So I don't know if Tyson would have done that if it wasn't for that. But I was also very impressed with Renier, Paul, so far this season and even in this episode, because he finds out this information that this person's got the idol, but he's going to keep that information for himself. He's not going to tell anybody in his alliance, and he wants to try and build trust with Tyson, who is on the outs. But it shows that a player like Renier, he sees value even in that one person that is isolated, and he still wants to work with them. He wants all the numbers on his side. What do you think of Renier this season and how he's playing at the moment?
He's playing a very good game.
Yeah,
with Jason. Yeah, no, Renier, I think you just sort of see him in the background as well, but he's watching everyone's moves. He's watching what's going on, and I think he's going to be playing. I think he's going to last quite long unless they realize he's a threat. But the way that he's playing his game, I think, could get him very, very far in the series as well. Playing a very, very good strategic game.
I was going to say, what's
Especially
really
now,
impressive.
I mean, when Tyson went and spoke to him as well, showing that with Tyson having come and spoken to him, the trust shown there, he's almost saying, I'll show trust from my side as well. So he's playing a very, very good game there, strategically.
And Riley, there was one line there that he said, he's the only person in the whole game that's got a full view of the map on both tribes, which is what I found very interesting, because clearly there's something the edit isn't showing us. He's getting information from the other tribe. Maybe it's in challenges when they're talking to each other, or people like Dino going over to the other tribe, bringing information back to him. But he feels like he's got a very good understanding of where the map is, with who's got what advantages in both tribes, and where people are sitting with their allegiances and things like that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds us of another great player, right?
Yeah, well, I think that instance was in regard to his relationship with Amy on the previous Zamba, and obviously Amy seems to be in the driver's seat on the new Zamba at the moment. She's obviously in a very strong position, and he has that connection with her back on the Zamba tribe, and also on his own tribe. Obviously, Renier seems to be the only one that's really talking to Teriso and the minority Vuna members, and obviously maintaining that relationship with Nicole and Marisha as well. So it seems to be across all alliances, and we even saw it when the idols were being played. He said to Teriso, are you going to play your idol? What's going on here? So he seemed to have a connection with almost everyone, and I do like how Renier is playing, because he hasn't really created any enemies at this point other than Teriso in the first episode there. So it seems like he's well liked by everyone. He seems to be guiding the votes and where they're going. And also, I think something we haven't talked about as well is he is so strong in challenges as well.
Yeah, and the thing about that's very interesting for me with Renier is that he's extremely strong in challenges, but he's also hiding a lot of those strengths, and people aren't noticing it. Like, there's a big difference between Chappies and Renier. Like, I feel like, Chappies, he's my man crush this season. Absolutely love him. Best player casting for me this season. Like, just the guy is just such a character, and he just seems to be larger than life. And I really gravitate towards those characters when they play the game, the characters that make me feel a certain way. Like, I know it's going to hurt when he gets voted out, but Chappies, he's struggling to control his threat level at the game at the moment. And everybody knows that he's a physical beast when it comes to doing these challenges. So Renier, I think, is capable of being just as big of a beast when it comes to the challenges, but he also understands that he needs to, like, even when he says this in this episode, even though he knows everything, he needs to continue to play low-key, play within himself, not put himself too much on the map. He understands that the threat level thing is something that's very important, and if you're seen as a threat too early on in the game, you're going to get voted out. And I do think that that's something that Rob, in your season, Paul, did really well as well. Like, he didn't come out of the blocks gun blazing from episode 1 trying to run everything. He kind of first created those relationships and those bonds, and then he started taking votes from Rocco onwards. He started really taking control of the game, and I think that Renier is someone that we could see another. Like, I am not willing to count Renier out as a potential winner this season. I've got 5 people in mind at this point that I think could win this game. Renier is one of those 5 for me still, and even the Teriso bit that we saw in the beginning of the season, I think even now with Teriso being out, we can quite easily say that was more to build towards Renier being a very capable player than what it was to say he was going to get voted out soon at any time. Overall, Renier, Paul, what are you thinking? Like, I think you did say he's a very smart player, but can you see some of those similarities between Rob and Renier, like especially with him getting these different bits of information and things like that as well?
Yeah, now that you bring it out, it's actually true what you're saying. I think they have got a bit of similarities, and he is playing. He's playing a clever game, but like you say, still sort of in the background, but I think he's going to bring a lot more out after merge. I think we're going to see more of his sort of physical strength and everything coming out as well. Playing very cleverly up until merge, and then I think we're going to see some change. That's what I feel anyway.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I remember is when they had the swap, Renier said that he was in the worst position he could have possibly been going into that swap because he lost Amy and Sean and Anella, who were the people he really wanted to work with. So those guys are all still safe on the other side. Plus, he's now built even stronger bonds with the people that he's in that Zamba tribe, now the new Vuna, at the moment as well. He's strengthened his bonds with Nicole, Marisha. He probably wouldn't have had this opportunity. This swap might have been the best thing for Renier needed to actually build and vote together and build trust with the other part of Zamba that he wasn't as closely aligned with prior to the swap. So I think it worked out pretty well for him here. I also want to touch on Riley Keehan. Listen, can nothing stay secret in Survivor South Africa Immunity Island?
Yeah, Keehan just baffles me at the moment. We haven't seen too much of her, it seems. But it seems as though Keehan really hasn't made a impact at all on this season. We saw a little bit in this episode, but she seems to be very hidden at this point. And I don't know when we're going to see more content from her, to be honest.
Yeah, Paul, I think I saw a cheeky photo of yourself, Kian, and Dino somewhere I think it might have been at the reunion of the previous Survivor South Africa Island of Secrets. Do you remember meeting her at all? Do you have any insights in regards to what that was like, or are you just as surprised by that as I am?
I think I'm just as surprised. I remember I'm old. I don't remember too much. You know, when you get to my age, you sort of, anything that happened over a year ago, you almost forget about. So no, I'm teasing. But yeah, I remember the photo and that, but there wasn't much. We didn't really chat much, to be honest with you. I think Dino and I have had sort of more of a relationship. I've spoken to him often. We've sort of met for coffee and everything.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, not with Queen.
So while we're on Dino, what is your sort of thoughts on Dino so far this season and how he's been able to, I guess, get himself into real trouble in the beginning of the game and sort of scrapping at the moment, rebuilding those social connections, trying to get himself in a better position? He does seem like he's worked himself into like more of a top 5 position, top 4 position potentially, because I would actually think he's probably ahead of Kian at this stage in the pecking order as well, since at least he's not blabbing out information to the other side.
Yeah, true. I think he's also going to, I mean, they've all seen that he's very, very good at puzzles. And I think the dynamics of the game is going to, obviously, once we get to merge, the dynamics change. Then you've got to get rid of the threats and everything. So with him, if he makes merge, I think he's going to be pretty much of a target, because we all know that a lot of the challenges do involve sort of the puzzling and figuring out and that. He's quite a physical guy as well. We also saw he didn't lose that one challenge. Was he against Paul? I think it was it Paul? Was it
Chappies against Chappies and
I mean, he's got quite a bit of physicability with him as well. So I think he's got quite a bit of an all rounder. So yeah, I think he's also going to go, if he's lucky enough with not being voted out, if he gets to merge straight after merge sort of as a threat, I think he could go quite far as well. I mean, he knows the game excellently. I mean, he's a super fan. So strategy wise and everything, I think he could play a good game still.
The one thing that makes me afraid for Dino at this point, Riley, is he's got a nervous energy about him. And, you know, this is the reason that Teresa targeted him as the person to go to try and flip the votes, because she thought he would be the weakest person in the sense that he wouldn't want to be collateral damage. I am afraid that, you know, moving forward into the game, when you align with people, you want to align with people that make you feel comfortable to a certain degree where, okay, this person's not going to freak out on me. They're not going to turn their back on me in the game. I am worried for him on that. Dino was your number 1 pick coming into this season. Do you feel like he's continuing to go upwards in the sort of pecking order here?
He started off very poorly, I thought. Obviously, that going for the immunity necklace, I don't blame him for that at all. It keeps him safe at the first tribal council. But the way I suppose he blurted it out and apologized for it in that first episode, and again, being caught out talking to Paul, a couple of big missteps there, but it seems like he's worked his way back up the hierarchy, and he seems to be in a good position with Renier. It seems they have a good relationship. We've seen secret scenes with him and Keehan as well. So I think you're right, though, Chris, in saying that Dino is... He runs a little bit scared, and he doesn't like unpredictability at all. We saw that, you know, with Teresa saying she had the idol, he immediately wanted to go over to her side because he didn't want to be on the wrong side of the idol. And I think when we're going to get to the later merge, it will be a big test for where Dino stands with things like the tribal council pass that Anesu has. How does he sort of handle those advantages in the game, and how does he get around it? Because I do think he's playing a little bit paranoid at this point.
Now, I did want to touch on a little bit of the Marisha-Teriso dynamic that comes back into the episode here. And we get here just prior to Tribal Council, Marisha and the rest of her alliance talking. And Marisha feels really insulted by the fact that Teriso tried to threaten her with this piece of paper, but she never got to see what was on it. And she takes that very personal. How difficult, Paul, is it when you're playing a game such as Survivor to keep your emotions out of it and to take offense to like little power plays and things like this? Because it's easy for us as spectators to look at that and say, maybe she's overreacting to Teriso just trying to save her life here. But I'm sure when you're out there, it's really difficult to keep those emotions in check. If somebody's coming against you or they're coming across as threatening and things like that, there was some miscommunication between them here that's going to blow up in the Tribal Council later on.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to keep everything to yourself. I mean, you're hardly getting any sleep. They also, I mean, if you look there, they've gone through a lot of rain, a lot of cold. So to keep it with, you've got to be very sort of patient to be able to keep it to yourself. I think there's some tiffs that you probably don't even see that are actually edited out or whatever, not in a bad way, but you do get aggravated with people. I mean, it's very easy to get aggravated being so, going through what you're going through. You're hungry. You haven't eaten much, although some of them have had quite a bit of food there and everything. The one thing, though, is they're cold. You can see it in challenges and that. But out of the challenges, how's all those jackets and everything that they've got this season?
Yes, well,
incredible. I mean, all those rain jackets and whatnot. But yeah, I suppose maybe being the Wild Coast, a lot of rain, maybe a lot colder. Obviously in Fiji, in that we had a lot of rain, Samoa, but the weather was cold, but not as cold maybe as what they had there. And so they were probably trying to sort of give them something that they're not freezing, so to say. And the nice thing is as well, I think we've set an example that we actually can film the next ones in the same location. I mean, whether we go to Samoa or Fiji 5 or 10 times to actually do the shoots. I think that the setting and everything, sometimes you even forget that it was at the Wild Coast. You think it was actually filmed somewhere overseas and whatnot. So I think it's proven that we can actually keep it local and do a lot more shoots locally.
Yeah, Chris Dixon in the chat agrees with you on that. He says that they should keep it in the same location regardless of the COVID situation moving forward. And I think that with us not being out of the woods yet and the world not being out of the woods yet when it comes to that sort of scenario, I can very easily see the next season being in South Africa as well. I would not be angry at it. We do get a lot of international, in fact, probably about 70% of our listeners, you wouldn't believe it, is from the United States. And then Australia and South Africa sort of follows on that. So a lot of people from the US will be listening to this and maybe would have picked up the same thing that you picked up, because in the US, they don't get raincoats, for instance. And I kind of thought about that a little bit myself, and I was thinking to myself, is there a reason why they brought raincoats in? Because I've been to Fiji, Samoa, the islands. It's pretty close to New Zealand. It's easy to go over there. There's a different type of humidity in the air there, so even when it's wet sometimes, it's not the same type of cold. It's like if you were to do a Survivor season in New Zealand and it were to get cold here, like people would die. Like it's why they've never done a colder season in Survivor worldwide in any case. So I think that for me, them getting a rain jacket actually doesn't bother me as long as it doesn't take away from the strategy. I actually had the opportunity to talk about 3 winners this week, and it was Fabio, Ben Driebergen, and Chris Underwood, and I defended their wins because the series name is A Win is a Win. It's on Hot Takes, and one of the big things that we sort of spoke about in Fabio's win was the fact that we had 2 people quit the game because they were cold, and that there was 2 girls who were supposed to be in bikinis sleeping at night, where some of the guys were allowed to have jackets by production, but obviously the nice blonde skinny girl can't have that. So she ended up quitting, and I would rather have people have jackets instead of them getting quit. It might be a hot take, it might be some people that disagree with me on that, but I will say that at least our seasons are still 39 days long, so I'll cut back with that. And in Australia's case, it's 50 days long. The next 2 seasons for the US is going to be 26 days. So for me, it doesn't take away from the strategy as long as they don't give them food all the time. Obviously, you've got to play for the rewards and things like that. I'm okay with that personally. You did touch on a lot of things, and I know there was something else I really wanted to go into, but I completely lost my train of thought. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Zamba, I guess, because we've been spending a lot of time on the Vuna tribe and some of the things that happened there prior to the tribal council. So on Zamba, we get Warda, Amy, and Carla all sitting in camp talking about who's going to be next. And again, I just keep getting more and more respect for Amy as a player. I think she's super savvy, super cerebral, doesn't really say more than what she needs to say. And she kind of lets them lead the conversation. And she's like, who do you guys think should be the next person? And it slips out that they actually wanted potentially to go for Santoni here if they couldn't go for Chappies. And she takes that information and turns that against those two girls and goes to Santoni and tells Santoni about this. And one thing that we've learned about Santoni this season, Riley, is that she does not like to be the little tag along to groups. And she feels really hurt by the fact that they're going to turn on her here. But I don't think she was going to go against Chappies in any case. But still, great play by Amy here with the girls and getting the vote to go in a way where she feels like she's winning out of it because she can break up another pair.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of Amy's game. She's playing the middle right now. She has Sean in her pocket as well. So they're really a tight twosome that can go either way, obviously, against Chappies and Santoni on one side, and I suppose Anella as well. And then on the other side, you got Wada and Carla. So really it was, what's the best option for Amy's game? Because obviously there's a big fracture there. There's not going to be one unified decision. She's sitting in the middle. And really, she played it perfectly, I think, in saying to Santoni, Carla's suggesting your name. Do you want to go for Carla? And I mean, of course, you can say the same thing to Carla and Water as well. Santoni's going after you. So really, it's up to Amy's in a perfect position. And it's amazing that, the former Zumba members, Smash, Sean, and Amy, came in the minority. And now they're in the power seat and they're really determining who is going home. And it's amazing just how quickly Amy has ascended to the top of Zumba.
Yeah, and that's why I've been giving her credit for the last 2 episodes in a row. And I said she was my player of the week in the previous 2 episodes because I felt like I'm not taking anything away from Smash and from Sean. They probably, it's the 3 musketeers working together to get the vote going their way. But from what we're seeing a lot of Amy's game. It's being shown to us. And I've been super impressed by that. Now, one of the other things, Paul, that gets mentioned here by Santoni is that, the other 3 likes Wada's cooking. So they'd rather keep Wada in the game than have Carla there. So how important is the whole dynamic with who's making food? Because the other Paul nearly voted Warda out because he said her cooking was bad, and I think in episode 2. But here there's like a whole different story where people are saying, no, actually her cooking is good. Is it an important thing there? Who made the food for you guys when you were out on the island?
I didn't last that long.
You didn't get any food?
I took the flint. We hadn't made fire yet. And so I didn't last as long as to see any of the good cooking or anything. We were lucky. We still remember from the first challenge, we got some fruit and whatnot. So we slithered on that. Actually, it's an amazing thing as well. Every now and then people will come up to me and say, but is it really that you don't get any food? Don't you, when the cameras stop, you actually get a nice meal or something? So a lot of people still have this perception that you're actually getting fed afterwards. They don't realize that you're not getting fed. But yeah, the question was about someone making food. To me, I don't think it's such an important thing. I think someone will take over the shift. And of what you can cook, I don't think it's that difficult to cook rice or to cook some fish if you catch some fish or whatever. So I don't think it's that important.
But what it is interesting because we see Sean and Anella and Amy talk about who they should vote for. And this is the point where the decision gets made. I think it was around the water well that they were talking. And Sean does very briefly try to deflect towards Warda. But Amy is the one that immediately says Carla is the one that we should be worried about. She's a very capable player. So clearly the decision to ultimately go for Carla here, Riley, isn't the fact that Warda makes better cooking, like Santoni said. There is a strategical sense in why they want to do it. But I was interested, firstly, 2 things, noticing that Amy was the one deflecting it onto Carla. Sean tried to defend Carla in the spot. And later on, we hear about this relationship between Carla and Sean that we've never seen on the show.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything between Carla and Sean at all. So that just completely caught me by surprise. I mean, we haven't seen much of Sean full stop other than that first episode when he went completely bombastic looking for the idol clue with Kehan there and playing it off as Flint. But it's amazing, actually, how quickly Sean's recovered and made that relationship with Amy, because in the first episode there was a lot of tension there. So to see that those two seem to be the strongest pair on that Zumba tribe at this point. So I think with Santini, at least, she's if Chappie's caught her out, she would probably go against him. Whereas I think Amy and Sean seem to be lockstep at the moment. And Smash as well is someone that came in a strong position, but is sort of tanking at the moment. So Amy really does seem to be in a strong position. And you're right in saying that, Carla is the big strategic threat. She's one that Chappies is obviously threatened by, having gone against him in a couple of votes there with Piney and Paul going home. So I think Carla was the right person to target here.
I do think that, and I could be wrong here, I know it's contradicting, and I'm not doing this to contradict you, but I do think that Anella and Amy are still pretty close as well. In the previous episode, or 1 or 2 episodes ago, she kind of said, I trust Anella to be able to turn the votes without me being there. I do think that relationship is close as well, but I do agree with you that Sean has worked his way out from no man's land to come into the alliance and become very important. And I think that Dino said it best in episode 1, nothing unites like a common enemy. And if you are in a tribe with a few people from your previous tribe, you kind of have to stick together, because if one of you goes, the rest falls. And Mike tried to prevent that from happening with his previous Vuna members, but it didn't work, and they ended up they were just too fractured, and now they are going one after the other. And the old Zumba members, they're really running that tribe to the point where I think that it wasn't a surprise to see where the vote was going to land. I was very fearful, as someone who's a very big Chappies fan and enjoys what he brings to the show. I was very fearful for him in this spot, but Paul, this was a very quiet episode for Chappies. Do you think it's a good thing that we only saw maybe on 2 confessionals and just talking? Because he's normally a pretty big character in every single episode. I felt like this episode we didn't see as much of him.
So what are you saying? That
so I was sort of wondering,
do you
think it's a good thing
this time around?
Yeah, do you think it's a good thing that he maybe had a bit of a cool down episode? Because the previous episodes, there was a lot of Chappies, but this episode I felt like we still saw him, but we didn't see as much of him in this episode. And he didn't really come across as someone that tried to dictate where the votes were going to go. And clearly he just lost his main man, Paul, in that previous episode. So he kind of took a bit of a backseat here for me in this round of play.
He took a backseat in editing. So I think maybe there's going to be quite a bit in the next 2 episodes, and the way that they're doing with the editing and everything. So they're probably saving him, because there's something's going to happen next episode that he actually comes back in, and they bring him back in with their editing and whatnot. It's just the way I think that they're so clever with their editing and everything, and rightfully so, because it makes TV gold the way they do everything.
Yeah, 100%. And Riley, sort of to go on with that, I personally think it's a good thing that Chappies had a quiet down episode. I would have been more worried if we saw this over the top, in which he probably still is that person. But I also feel like Chappies is a lot smarter than what people actually give him credit for. Like Mike said that when I had an exit interview with Mike Laws, he said that Chappies was a lot more aware than what people thought. A lot of people on the island just thought he was this golden boy, hero type of guy, and he thought he was a golden retriever, but he ended up being a lot more I forgot what he said, a Rottweiler or something. He was a lot more savvy and had a lot more bite to him, and he had a lot more strategy behind him. I think it's a good thing personally that Chappies was not as vocal and trying to dictate votes and things like this, because I think that he kind of knew that this wasn't his place to try and drive the votes just after losing Paul. And Santoni is still seen as coming over to him and letting him know that he's going to receive some votes at this point. And she seems to still be very close with him. And she again says that she's got a soft spot for Chappies. So I really love this. Like Santoni is a big character and Chappies is a big character, and I love that alliance and that dynamic between the two at the moment.
Yeah, it is good to see Chappies getting a little bit less airtime, just because it shows that he's here to stay, I suppose, and that he does have more to give. I think that's always something you got to watch with the edit, and I don't like to read too much into it, but just watching how people are portrayed. And so far, Chappie's been a big character. He's been we've got a lot of fun camp life moments with him running into the water naked. We've got all that strategic stuff with telling Pinty and Paul about the diplomatic community, and seeing him create different relationships with people like Anesu and Santini. But then again, he's also in this episode he took a little bit of a step back, which I think is good for his character. We likened him a little bit to Tony in Cagayan, in that he's a big character, but I think it's good for Chappies not to be too present in this episode. And it did seem like it was a battle between Santini and Carla in this instance. So for him to sort of step out of the spotlight and take a step back and let that battle be fought between those two, I think is smart on his part.
I will again say it. I know we've said it a few times on this podcast, like, yes, he plays that out there game like Tony, but if he wins this season, it would be a bigger game than Tony's game. I'll put that hot take out there, because Tony's game, he had alliance members around him that wanted to work with him throughout the whole season. I don't feel like Chappies is building an army. I don't feel like there's a whole bunch of people that's going to go to bat for him. So if he goes to the merge and he can escape 1 or 2 episodes and then goes on to the biggest immunity run of all time, or he starts finding idols, that's his way to the end. I don't think this group of people with this level of players that are playing this season is going to allow for him to get anywhere close to the end. I just don't see it happening. And I hope I'm wrong, because I like seeing Chappies. I feel like my gut is telling me Chappies is like a early merge boot type. Like, he probably makes it to merge maybe, but he's around there. And again, there's a lot of speculation. We love to speculate on this podcast, or I do. I love reading into the edits and things like that in any case. But I really want to see him go far, but he's got a massive mountain to climb. It's kind of my point and what I want to get at. Lastly here, just before we go to Tribal Council, Carla does talk to Warda and says that she feels nervous that the vote potentially will go onto her and Chappies here going into the Tribal Council, and that if Chappies has got an immunity idol, then she will be going home. So the same fear for both of them. Obviously, Chappies is afraid that Carla potentially could play an immunity idol, and then he goes home. Last thing here that I wanted to touch on, it was quite interesting, the Sean dynamic, and Sean being her protector who protected her twice from previously going home. I did ask Carla a little bit about this in the exit interview, which we'll be releasing in the next 24 hours, and she goes into her relationship and how she worked with Sean and the things that we didn't see on the show. So watch out for that. Apparently they played a bit more of a game together than what the show actually showed us. Tribal Council. Zamba is the first tribe to go into Tribal Council, and Nico is asking Marisha how hard it is to keep your heart out of the game and to become emotionally involved. And this is where things start going south again between Teresa and Marisha. And Marisha talks about the fact that, that potentially Teresa is going to show them something tonight. It's going to be a note which will keep us safe, but she didn't get to see the contents on the note. So she doesn't really know what it is that Teresa has got. And she believes that a cat only has 1 life, not 9 lives. And there's a lot of back and forth going on here. I guess we've already discussed quite a bit about what was going on throughout the episode with that. I guess the next thing here that was quite interesting was also to have Nicole bringing up the contingency plan, and immediately Dino is getting nervous because he doesn't know if he's the contingency plan or if there's a different contingency plan. But Kiran explains to Nico that he's put his game on the line, and Nico seems very surprised. I think potentially, Riley, the guys here, and I've got a lot of respect for Nico, but I feel like Nico was a few steps behind the type of gameplay that was happening in this specific Tribal Council.
Yeah, well, usually Nico is a little bit more inquisitive, but I think he really was. You're right. He really was behind the 8 ball here, because there was so much going on in this episode. Obviously, Teresa feigning off that she had the idol, Tyson actually having the idol, and Nesu without a vote being on Immunity Island, and then Karan telling people to put votes on him. I really do give credit to Karan. That is such a ballsy move. It could have easily gone wrong if maybe one extra person had voted his way. He could have easily gone home. So for him to say to everyone, put a couple of votes on me, I don't care. It'll show that I trust you. I'm telling the truth. I know where the idols are, and I'm telling you the truth here. It is a great move for Karan, but you're right. Nico is a little bit behind and honestly shocked at this gameplay, and I'm shocked that it's playing at this high level as well. Every episode so far, every Tribal Council has been a blindside, and this season the cast are really, really bringing their A game. It is on another level completely. Everyone is playing at Rob Bentel's level this season, it seems.
Yeah, like, honestly, I agree. I feel like everybody that came into this season, they watched that previous couple of seasons. There's a lot of them that we know have watched a lot of the Australian seasons. There's a lot of them that have watched the US seasons. These guys are very aware, and they're playing at that level. And Nico, I don't blame him. I didn't throw shade at him. It's like, imagine trying to stay on top of what is happening with that type of strategy and gameplay happening live as it's taking place in front of your eyes. You don't have the tape to roll back potentially like we did to go and watch it twice before we came into this podcast. And you have to kind of, because he seemed really shocked by the fact that Kieran was willing to offer himself up, but obviously it was never going to be the case. Like Kieran, I felt like it was a very risky but calculated move, since he knew who had what and who didn't have what. So he kind of knew where the votes were going to fall. And we do see here that Tyson ends up getting 4 votes. That's all negated because he plays his idol correctly. Great stuff by Tyson, because like he said, he'd rather be the person that plays the idol than go home with an idol in his pocket. And I think that it's the right move in that stage. It's a very difficult thing to do, but in his case, he knew he was in the minority. So why take that chance, coming into that and not play that idol? Ultimately, though, Teresa is going to get voted out with 2 votes here to 1 against Kieran, if I remember correctly. Was there anything else that Teresa could have done, Paul, in your mind? Do you think that she played the best that she can? What's the eulogy on Teresa's game?
No, I think, as we mentioned before, the only chance she had was to try and bluff them that she had the idol. She tried again to talk away sort of out of it and to try and sort of convince them that she still has got the idol. I don't think there was much more that she could have done at this stage. Well, at that stage, yeah. I think she did everything that she could to try and save herself.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we head into the Vuna Tribal Council, and this was a very interesting tribal council for me because obviously you get Zamba sitting on the jury bench, which Sean will remind them of later on, and they were all eating food while the Vuna tribe is going in there having to vote someone else out. And Warda kind of mentioned this earlier in the episode that mentally it's starting to take a toll on Vuna having to go to tribal council as often as they have to. And, they always say that winning is a habit and losing is a habit as well. So when you're on that negative spiral of having to go one tribal council after the other to say goodbye to people, it's not the greatest feeling when you're going in there again. I think it was their 3rd time in a row having to vote someone out. So going into this specific tribal council, Sean is really aggressive towards his old Zamba members here, Riley, and, really sort of makes them aware that if they were really great Alliance members, they wouldn't have taken a good machete from them and given them a machete that's not working because they can't make fire at camp, they can't eat properly, and there's a lot of difficulties here, and I felt like Sean was really confrontational here.
I did like as well that I think it was Wider that mentioned that they're playing and practicing for talking in front of the jury as well. But what Sean said, in that they took the machete from them, they're sort of abandoning their tribe. I think it is a great setting to have Vuna tribe eating on the bench, and then obviously the Zamba tribe at tribal council, and to hear them sort of obviously talking to Nico, but at the same time sending messages to the Vuna member and their former Alliance members and saying, hey, things aren't as they seem. Potentially they can obviously tell messages and tell them where the votes align, but also call them out as well. So I think it was a really ballsy move by Sean to call out his former Zamba tribe mates and say, what's going on? Here's my new alliance. There's no path forward with you guys at this point. I am wholly committed to this new Zamba tribe.
Yeah, and it's a great move, Paul. If they don't have another swap, I came onto this podcast very bravely and said there will probably be 3 swaps this season. They've only been 1 because they had such an early swap. I don't think there will be 3 any longer. I've got egg on my face in regards to that. I love to make these bold claims, but I do think that there may be 1 more coming. Riley said prior to us going live, maybe it won't happen because we see the next time on Survivor and it looks like they've still got the same buffs on when they're actually playing in that next challenge. But if there is another, let's play hypothetically, if there is another swap here, this potentially could put Sean in a little bit of a bad spot here because he's quite confrontational here towards his previous tribe members and people that are not in that group, telling them that they are the jury already.
But I think they're down to 14 now, if I'm correct, eh?
14 after this, yes.
Yeah, so we've still got 4 episodes to go. There could just be a sudden twist in maybe not next week, but the week after, something could change again. But I think his thinking is, well, there's no chance of another tribe swap now. There's 14. It's not going to happen now. It's too close to merge. So I think on the way he's thinking is that's it. He's now with Zamba and finished.
Yeah, I think he's bargaining on a 12-person merge with probably 9 jury members and then a final 3 potentially going into that. So maybe that's why he's sort of going to bat here. But I do think it's going to put a little bit of pressure, because it did look like Nicole and Dino and those people, they did feel bad about the fact that they did that to their previous Alliance members, because I do think that in their mind, they're thinking, we still want these 3 votes when we go into a merge, so we don't want to completely burn them off. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come back from that, because I do understand Sean's hurt and frustration in this moment when you're out there trying to survive and these guys are not giving you the means to just do the basics. So I fully get where that's coming from. But there's a lot of conversation here, obviously, happening. And while this conversation is happening, we get Carla constantly winking at the other tribe there. Riley, I did ask Carla about what was going on, so she's going to tell us that in the exit interview tomorrow when that comes out. But at that moment, were you similar to me, thinking that maybe she's trying to get favors from that tribe if there's a potential tribe safety nom coming up? Like in a lot of the seasons, you've got the tribe on the jury bench that can choose to save someone in that specific. I thought she was playing at that level. Did you think that maybe that was something that could happen in this episode?
I also didn't take any notice of that. I didn't pick up on those views. But potentially with obviously Inesu, Tyson, and Kiran being on that tribe, and now being close to a majority, they seem to have a lot of trust there. It would be something to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, so Grant de los Santos is asking, do you think that they will merge at 13? I personally think they're going to merge at 12. That's the number I think it's going to be. I think it'll be a final 3 with 9 jury members, potentially. But who knows? Sometimes they do merge at 13, and then the first person voted out is just not part of the jury. That's a possibility as well. I kind of feel like they've left it a bit late now for another swap, but I think that they do need to do another swap to continue to muddy the water. Otherwise, there might be too much predictability going into the merge with certain old Zumba members working together potentially in the merge part of the game. Outside of that, I guess it's pretty cut and dry. It's pretty straightforward here on the vote, but it's between Carla and Chappies, with Carla ultimately getting a 4-2 vote against her with 14 players left in the game. Paul, what did you think of Carla's game overall this season? Were you impressed, and what could she have done differently?
I was impressed with her game. I think she played a very good game. I actually thought she would go further, besides obviously this episode. Differently, you know what? It's so easy for us watching to say you should have done this differently or that differently. But I think when you're in the game and you're there, there's just so much dynamics to the actual game, so much going on, so much that we don't even know about, that it wasn't in the edit. So to say, like you say, you did the exit interview, there was a lot more that actually came out. So I think she played the game very nicely, and I think she did all that she could to try and save herself. So yeah, I think she played a very, very good game. It's a pity that she left so early. I think there would have been some good play in her left. But yeah, that's Survivor for you. Yeah.
Riley, do you think there's a possibility of that happening? 2 tribes into 3 smaller ones before the merge?
See, well, I was along the same line of thinking as Grant, in thinking that we'll merge at 13. But now I'm starting to think maybe we'll get a merge at 12. And then we've seen this twist in the past where they merge the tribes and then split them into 2 random groups at the immunity challenge. One group of, say, 6 goes to tribal council. And then I think that could be somewhere where obviously Chappie's with his diplomatic immunity, it could come into play at that point. We don't really know at this point, but I think there is a chance that we'll see the merge and then split into 2 groups to add a little bit more variance into the game, I think.
That's right. So we've got our teams here. So Paul, you get a little bit of a sneak peek as to who's in my team and who is in Riley's team. And both of us are going to have someone from our team be eliminated here. So in the 5th spot here, we're going to have Teresa eliminated. And in the 6th spot, I am losing Carla here. So still holding on to that 2-person lead at this point. Myself and Riley's got a friendly wager going on who's going to have the most members at the merge. So there's some beers up for grabs. Riley, I hope you're ready to pay up.
I'll get my wallet out, Chris.
We never know what's going to happen, but I do feel pretty comfortable that I'm in the driver's seat going into, hopefully, I'm hoping it's the final 12 is when it happens, because even if I lose 2 people in a row now, then it's a draw. So I don't know what we do in that case. We never really accounted for there being a potential draw.
The beers then change to pina colada.
Pina colada. Exactly. Now, what we normally do towards the end of the episode is we nominate who we think played the best game. And last week we had our first draw between Santoni, I believe it was Carla, and Amy. Riley, who did you pick last week? Was your pick the Carla one?
I picked Carla last week, yeah. And I mean, It was unfortunate to see her go, but I think she's played such a strong game. Really unfortunate that she just couldn't get on the right side of the votes in this episode.
Yeah, well, I guess the public who were voting on Inside Survivor thought Santoni was the best. They had Carla at second for last week, then followed by Marisha, Dino, and Amy was only at fifth. So I'm not asleep on them on Amy. The public is asleep on Amy. I still think she's a very good player, but she didn't quite make it to the top there. Santoni has twice in a row now been the favorite, I guess, when it comes to the public. But I guess coming into this week, Riley, I'm going to get you to start off this time so we don't always have our guest be the first person, and gives Paul a little bit of time to think about who he thinks played the best game for this episode as well. It's a little bit harder because we had two tribes going to tribal council, where normally we tend to lean on whoever went to tribal council. They probably were one of the best players if they survived and they led the vote. Riley, who do you think, and who's your case for the person who played the best game?
Yeah, it is tough with two tribal councils, obviously. And I mean, we saw a little bit less airtime over on the Zamba tribe. But I think for me, my pick this week has to be Amy. I think the way she handled being in the middle and trying to appease both sides and ultimately blindsiding Carla there and betraying her trust, I think it was a great move to pivot the vote. And it seems like she's in a strong position at the moment. She hasn't really created any enemies on her original tribe or this new merge or this new swap tribe either. She seems to be in everyone's good graces and really calling the shots on the Zamba tribe at the moment. So yeah, Amy gets my pick of the week.
Okay. Paul, do you want to go next, or do you want me to do the second?
You go for it first.
Okay. So I'm going to make it interesting because I could very easily go Amy as well, because I do rate Amy very highly. That's why I nominated her twice before. But I do want to make a case here for Renier. And I think that Renier played a really good game. I think he's in charge of that alliance of all Zamba members at the moment, but he's doing it in a way where he's not a dictator. The girls seem to come to him, and sort of when the plan of Kiran came up, where Kiran said that he's happy for 2 votes to be placed on them, Marisha checked in with Renier to say, Renier, what do you think of that? Do you think that's a good plan? So it shows me that Renier is someone that they sort of look at as a bit of a leader in their tribe. Renier, like he said in this episode, he's got a lot of the field. He knows where the field is at the moment. He knows what's happening on the other tribe via his undercover alliance with Amy and getting information coming back to him. I'm thinking in between potentially tribal competitions and things like that, or Dino bringing information back to him. Plus, Tyson now started coming to him, and like Tyson said, he's his own number one, and then I guess Kiran is his number 2, and I don't know where Renier falls into that, but still, he's getting people coming to him and talking to him, and he's seen as someone that can form all these different bonds. He is starting to remind me early days Rob Bentelli. I'm afraid if he's going to be able to continue to play this game throughout, but Rob has shown that it can be done, so it's a possibility. I do feel like he's very, very well situated at the moment and deserves a bit of respect for what he's been able to achieve in the game up until this point. So, Paul, you don't have to go for Renier or Amy. You can have a completely different person and we'll have another draw. That's highly possible that could happen as well. But it's over to you now. Who do you think played the best game for this episode?
Yeah, I think I've got to go with Riley and say Amy. I definitely do. I think she played very well. And I think we must take our hats off as well to Kiran for the way the courage that he had to put the votes on himself and everything as well. But yeah, I'm with Riley on this one with Amy.
I'm not angry with that at all. I highly rate Amy, and I just wanted to make it interesting. But Amy's play between the girls, where she didn't give a lot of information away and got them to give her more information so that she had more rope to hang them by, for me just spoke volumes of her social game. And like I said throughout this whole episode, such a cerebral player, so really good undercover, I don't think anybody realizes the level of gameplay that Amy is playing at the moment, and she took out another really big player in Carla. So if you do look at it from that point, who took out the biggest threat this episode between Renee and Amy? Amy took out the bigger threat in Carla, because I don't think Teresa was ever really, loved Teresa, but I don't think she was going to run this game. She just didn't have that social capital to be able to do it. Like she said, a lot of Survivor head smarts doesn't always translate into actually being able to go out there and play the game well when you're playing it. All right, so we are getting to the pointy end here of the podcast. Paul, I want to shoot it over to you. Is there anything that you would like to shout out? I know you're very active on Twitter at the moment. We'll make sure to put your Twitter link in the description below. Is there anything else that people can follow you on, or any other projects you're working on at the moment that you want to make people aware of?
Not at all. I'm happy where I am. I'm enjoying the series. I'm enjoying your podcast. Well done. And the knowledge that you guys have gotten, everything. I sit here and I'm like, okay, what can I say next? Because these guys just know everything so well. I'd love to see you. I'd love to see you guys on Survivor. And I hope one day that's going to become a reality, that we actually see you playing the game, because with the knowledge that you've got and just the way that you guys do these podcasts and everything, it's really incredible. I mean, I've played the game and I think you would put me to shame out there. Really, you guys are brilliant. Yeah, so thanks. It's an awesome podcast. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope the next time that you invite me, I'm as knowledgeable in the game as the way that you guys are, because I mean, I've watched, I think, about 28 series. I studied the game, I watched, and I thought I knew exactly what's going on. But, it's totally different when you're out on the island. And I think it's so easy for the guys to judge the guys that are playing the game. But when you're there, you get into this sort of frenzy. Like when I realized that in ours, okay, the next person's going. So what's the next thing you do? Oh, you got to form a tight three. But the tight three is only at a later stage. But there you are, and you're thinking, okay, now I must form a tight three. You're not thinking of, you got to stick to your alliance. And I mean, that's an amazing thing. You'll see on this cap here as well. We had LB sign it, we had Nico sign it, and we had Andre sign our cap. The reason why I'm wearing this one is because we've got Survivor Australia coming soon. So I thought I'd wear an international one. But their main thing on here was, Andre said, Paul, stick to your alliance. So you're playing a game, but I think there's just so much going on in your head that what is the next step? And I think in this series, it's amazing the knowledge that the players and that have got. They're actually very, very clued up with the actual game and the way to play it. And I think we're seeing that in this series, and they're really editing it well in the way that it's a totally different to the last seasons that we've had. It's brilliant.
I was going to add that Survivor, I believe, season after season gets harder and harder to win, because people consistently learn of what can be done in certain situations. They learn of the mistakes that other people have made. Like, we thank you firstly for shouting out the podcast and giving us all those great compliments, but also it's a love-hate relationship with those types of comments, because if Riley or myself ever played the game, they'd just be like, those guys need to be targeted immediately. But a counter argument for any future Survivor players listening to this, if I ever am on the same season as you, the fans always overthink it and get voted out early on. It's the non-fans that have only watched 1 or 2 seasons, like Rob Bentelli. They're the ones that go all the way and win the game, So don't target the fans necessarily. But no, we really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and talk about Survivor with us. Love the passion that you have for the show. It's been great talking to you about it. Like, we've got Australian Survivor coming up. Who knows if our dots and I's align, then maybe we have you on for that. But it's a little bit harder, because we will be talking about 3 episodes at a time, Riley, when that comes out, because they've got 3 episodes a week. So it's a very difficult one to break down. You were saying it's hard to break down when 2 people get evicted. Now we're going to have to break down when 3 people get evicted. So that'll be pretty tough on us. But Riley, I do want to give you an opportunity as well to talk about Snuffed, your YouTube channel. What do you have coming up next?
Yeah, we'll be recapping the story of Todd Herzog, winner of Survivor China, over on my channel, continuing the journey to sole survivor of US winners, and also recasting Survivor Micronesia as All-Stars 2 as well. So I think that'll be something to look forward to over on my channel at Snuffed.
All right, so on this channel, I was involved in hot takes, like I mentioned earlier. We talked about the wins of Fabio, Ben Driebergen, and Chris Underwood. I got very passionate about the Ben Driebergen one specifically because I do feel like he is very underrated by the fans out there, and he's a great player off the game. Not his winners, like he was good at Winners of War, but his actual win in his season, I do feel like people hate on that way too much. So, and the other two people in there as well. I know Fabio is one of Riley's favorite winners of all time. I'm a big fan of the Fabio win as well. And then Chris Underwood, I think we made some compelling cases as to why you should still love Chris Underwood's win and, well, at least tell him, maybe not love, but at least agree that he deserved to win it in the season that he won that season. Outside of that, we will be back probably tomorrow night. You'll see the same time, or tomorrow morning if you're in South Africa, you'll see the exit interviews be released for both Carla and Teriso. And then next weekend, we'll be doing all of this again, Riley, and we will be talking about episode 7 for Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. And I'm going to announce it now. Hopefully it doesn't change last minute, but we should have PK to talk about the chaos that we have going on in Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. So really looking forward to having PK come on the show and talk about Survivor South Africa Immunity Island. Guys, it's been great having you on it. And next time,